I say we just get going. I already introduced myself, Cindy. So if
Okay.
you wanted to introduce yourself, we'll
Yes.
keep the show.
Thanks. I'm Cindy Tereskevich. I'm the assessment consultant at Wayne County RESA. I focus on state testing, state compliance, around state assessments and accountability. So we're going to tag team this, talking about the instructional side and the compliance component side of MSTEP today. So Heather already shared the sign-in information. Okay. And our time together, we're going to cover why do we assess with standardized assessments. Again, the components of MSTEP, the compliance side of it. High quality, ambitious tier 1 instruction. We're going to share some MSTEP resources, and then we'll finish off with some questions. So our learning commitments for today, take a learning stance and be present. Ask questions, raise your hand, put questions in the chat. We're going to monitor through that. This is an informal environment, so you can stop and interrupt with questions too. Presume positive intentions and then commit to contribute. Okay, so we'll start off with the why we assess students and why around the standardized assessments. State and federal law requires students to assess student learning every year. And they have specifics for the different grade levels and the different subjects that are federally and state mandated. And I'll go through that in a little bit. Annual assessments that are the same for all Michigan students give us the information on how students are performing and how well schools and districts are teaching students compared to those in other communities, states, and nations. So it gives us that normative data to look at how other schools are doing. It helps target supports and resources to students and schools that need them most. It also helps identify areas of success from which others can learn, and it gives that data for that top 10 education that MDE is focused on. State standardized assessments cannot measure everything though. Okay, that's the key point that we're trying to make here. It is a snapshot, one day in the life of a child. It does help measure what students know in the terms of state content standards, but it doesn't measure the whole picture of a student. Just to remember that, okay? You want to have that balanced assessment. So this is just that one key piece. So this breaks down the state assessments by grade and content. You can see for your 3rd, 4th, 6th, and 7th, they are required to test in English, language arts, and math. At your 5th and 8th grade levels, you add in the science and social studies. You also have your special education tests there for My Access. Okay, I do want to note that social studies for 5th and 8th grade, they do not offer a participation or supported independence level of social studies. They only offer the functional independence level. So you do have to assess those students for My Access with a local social studies assessment, and you would have to do an appeal on the tested roster to let them know that you used a local assessment, but it's not offered from the state at that level, but you are still required to test them with some type of assessment. So these are federally and state mandated. And they did release the 2023 calendar for the spring. So you can get these dates into your calendar for planning. You can see the change with grades 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 11 for MSTEP. They made that a one solid 6-week window. They changed that this last spring to 2020. And that's for all subjects. They added an additional 4-week into that 6-week window just for 3rd grade ELA. And that is so that schools could really focus on getting that ELA portion done for the read by grade 3 requirements. And so it could be scored.
Cindy,
and then, yep.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
When we see a schedule like this where it has 6 weeks of time that's blocked off, does this mean that districts and schools are testing continuously for those 6 weeks? How should we interpret that block of time?
Districts can make their own schedule that fits within that 6-week window. You're going to see a lot of research, like students don't test as well in the afternoon. They might not test as well on Fridays, or you have a lot more of students absent on Fridays. So you can make your own schedule. and test what fits with your building schedules within that 6-week window. But makeups have to be done within that 6-week window. So you don't have to test continuously. You can space it out within that 6 weeks as long as you get it all done in that 6 weeks and you have makeups done within that 6 weeks, but you can make your own schedule. Did that answer the question well enough? Okay. And then for the paper pencil, one big switch that they made this year, well, this 2020-22, that will go again next year. They don't have designated dates for paper and pencil. Any student can take a paper and pencil exam. They don't need an IEP or 504. If you have a student who just can't focus on the computer or maybe needs that one-on-one or a human reader or a translator, you can have them work with an adult or a translator. You could change their test cycle to paper and pencil, and then they would order that hard copy of the test. And then they have 4 weeks to test that 4-week window. They used to have designated specific days you had to test the content areas on. It is now just an open 4-week window. And again, any student can do paper and pencil. They do not need an IEP or 504. And then your My Access, you have a 7-week window there. This just breaks down the timings. I'm sorry, go back. This just breaks down the timings. So you can see how much time is allotted when you're writing your schedules. Again, this is estimated test times. Students are allowed as much time as they need. If they don't finish within the test time of that period or that day, students can come back and finish as many times as they need until testing is done. You cannot time them and rush them through the test. They get as much time as they need. Okay. And write this down here. So this is for M-STEP, just a breakdown of some of the information that you're going to find on M-STEP. As you remember, it's a computer adaptive test. It's 1 part and 1 test ticket. The questions adapt as how the students are answering questions. So for a 3rd grade test, it's not necessarily going to adapt to 4th and 5th grade questions. It's going to stay within that 3rd grade range of questions. It just might be at a higher rigor of questions within 3rd grade content, or a lower rigor based on how they're answering. So they're not giving them questions out of the grade level. You do have technology enhanced items, and they do have a passage-based writing prompt, a PBW, that's embedded into the online experience. Every grade has that. The students do have to type their response unless they have signed up for the hard copy written test. You do have some accommodations and supports. You have text-to-speech and human reader supports. So there are 3 different levels to this, and this gets confusing for a lot of different schools. The universal tool, it is automatically embedded into the platform, and it will turn on if the students press play. This will only play directions. Okay, so that is a universal tool for all students. The next level for text-to-speech and human reader is a designated support. Students do not need an IEP or 504. So if you have students who are in your child study or MTSS and they're at the lowest tier of reading or getting interventions, and they may need that support with text-to-speech or a human reader, they are definitely allowed this support. This will give them question and answer options only. This will not give them passages. So no passages, but they still get the question and answer options read to them, human reader, text-to-speech. There are some forms that you'd want to go through with a team to see who qualifies, and you definitely don't want to do this as an umbrella support for everybody. That will flag your school, and MDE will definitely come and audit. But you want to identify the students who are most at risk and would need this support. And then the last level is accommodations. Students must have an IEP or 504. This will give you questions, answer options, and passages. However, this is only available for ELA grades 6 and 7. So grades 3 through 5, even if you have an IEP, cannot get the passages read to them. They will still use just the designated support. The reason here is they're testing to see how well a student reads at those grade levels. And if the passages are being read to them, it kind of takes away the capability to measure that. So grades 3 through 5, even with an IEP, will not have that that accommodation level support. They'll have that designated support level only. There's also a link here for relevant vocabulary for ELA MSTEP. It just is a good idea to take some of this language and embed it into some of your instruction. Do not print this out and give students vocabulary tests and just teach this vocabulary. You know, if they may say main idea on the MSTEP, where you're teaching central idea or vice versa. So you want to make sure that you're using some of the language that they're going to see on the assessment with your everyday instruction. And Heather, you can add anything you want. Okay, so this just breaks down the different claims. Claim 1, 2, 3, and 4. Claim 1 reading. They have 3 to 4 reading passages. Informational and literary, and you have 14 to 16 items that are all selected response. In the writing, you have that 1 writing prompt, and then you also have 12 to 14 selected response items. So, and they use a 4-point rubric, which we'll share some resources later. And then for the different grade levels, it does cover what standards are included in that writing. So you could include that into your lesson planning. And then claim 3 listening, you have 2 to 3 listening passages. Make sure you have headphones. And you have 8 to 9 items. And then claim 4 is research. You have 8 to 9 items there. And then this is just another fancy chart to look at it. And then there's a crosswalk document link. It links the standards over to the claims and the targets. So for math, same thing. You have your computer adaptive test. It's going to adapt to how the students answer. Grades 3, 4, and 5 is 1 part. Grades 6 and 7, you have 2 parts. You have a calculator and no calculator part. You have your technology enhanced items. No calculators are allowed for grades for students in grades 3, 4, and 5. And that goes same as with the reading. They're seeing how the students can do those computations. So they're not allowed to use those calculators. In grade 6, a basic calculator is embedded online. In grade 7, you have a scientific calculator that's embedded. And those calculators will turn on automatically for the students. If the student needs a handheld calculator, that is available as an accommodation for students if they have the IEP or 504. And if you're using paper and pencil, you can also use handheld. Another, the blueprint breakdown for your different claims and how many items are in each claim. So you can see it's very heavy with concepts and procedures, and then communicating and reasoning comes in there after, but really heavy in that claim 1. And then also math crosswalk document to those standard alignments. Your science, it's an online fixed form, all multiple choice response, which means it does not adapt to how the student answers. Those questions are set and fixed. It is grades 5 and 8 and 11, 1 part, 90 minutes. They are allowed to use a calculator on any item in the science assessment, and that calculator is embedded. So the students can go to the tools and turn on that calculator anytime during the science assessment. This just shows the item clusters, which they are using. They have different domains. There are a set of 5 to 8 items with a common stimulus. So in 2022, each student was administered 7 item clusters from the various domains on each test. So, and that was random. So you could see they sent out 4 different forms to schools, and then they had the different item clusters for each different form. So, but those domains are earth, life, and physical science. Those are the domains that they focus on with the science test. On social studies, it's an online fixed form, just like science. It's 1 part. Grades 5 and 8 is 60 minutes and grade 11 is 30. So the current assessment is still based on 2007 standards. They're looking at a 3 to 5 year transition to move it to the new 2019 standards. They want to still build an item bank and train teachers and do more field test items. So that will be a little bit still. And these are the disciplines that they focus on in the different grade levels. So history, geography, civics, government, economics, and public discourse. And then if you're looking I'm sorry, economics is on there twice. If you're looking to build on from 7th to 8th grade, see what they're going to test on. That's what they're testing on. And then I wanted to share some reports that they have. A lot of people don't know that this report is available, but this is the M-STEP Growth and Proficiency Report. It's found on the OEAA website in the dynamic score reports. So it gives you the student proficiency, the overall proficiency, and how they scored on that performance band. And then it shows you a quadrant below the 4 quadrants. And it takes their proficiency and their growth, and it tells you if they had high proficiency, high growth based on what quadrant they fall in. So you can see the color coding with the blue box. So this student, the white circle, is where the student is. They fall in high growth and high achievement. Okay, so a student in the lower left-hand box would be low growth, low achievement. But this is available for every single student for M-STEP, PSAT, SAT. But it's there for science and social studies and your ELA and math. Now, science and social studies, they're taking it back from 8th grade back to 5th grade. So the growth is year spans, but it's still available. But a lot of people don't know this is there. They also have your M-STEP proficiency and claims report. So it breaks down a class roster or student roster report, how each student did, how they performed on those performance bands. And then it shows you each of the claims, reading, writing, listening, and research. And it shows you if they were above, if they were at or near the standard, or if they were below the standard by the color coding, the orange, yellow, and blue. So you can see which claim your class or classes are really struggling with, and you could even do a vertical alignment to see across the grade levels to see where those classes are struggling with those claims.
Cindy?
Yeah.
We had a question in the chat about accessing these types of reports. Can you talk a little bit about how teachers might gain access to these?
Yep. So your principal and administration would have access to OEAA, and there is a district administrator that controls access for the district. So your principal could put you in touch with them, but there is, in the last maybe 4 or 5 years, they did create a teacher level access. So you could talk to your administration and ask them to grant you teacher level access. You could also just request that they pull these reports for you if they aren't comfortable with you having access into the OEAA. Ask them to pull some of these reports for you and share them with you. You can also have them email me and I'll pull some reports and help the district any way that I can too. But there is a teacher level access that they added into OEAA that you would be able to see just your class. So school, this is the next level. It kind of drills down even deeper than just the claims. So your school expectation analysis report, this would cover your social studies. They used to have this report for science, but with science being new, they're going to have a new report, which I have not seen yet. So this covers social studies. It just tells you the standards and how the students performed. And this one looks a little different because since it's a fixed online multiple choice, either the students got it wrong or they got it right. So you're not going to see scores in the middle columns. You're just going to see scores in the very either incorrect or correct first column and last column. But you can see, you know, some of these average percent points earned, which ones have very little percent points earned on some of those questions. You can go back to some of those standards and see where students are not scoring very well. And then the report on the bottom is the claim report. So it takes those claims and it drills them down into those targets, and it can show you, you know, for claim 1 reading, the targets that are in that claim, how those students performed. So it has the symbols, relative strength. The circle is neither strength nor weakness. The upside down triangle is relative weakness, and then the star is insufficient data to report. So this report is a little bit hit and miss sometimes, because sometimes with the test being computer adaptive, not all the students get the same questions, and they might not have enough data in that sample size to collect. So you might get a lot of stars, but you can get some data off of this and drill down to look at the big picture of curriculum, not for students, not to change up their instruction, but for the big picture with your curriculum. That's how you want to take these reports and use them. Okay, thank you. Any questions from that side? No.
Oh my gosh, Cindy, that was a lot of really good information that I think it's some of those things that maybe teachers don't get that information when administrators are often the testing coordinator, and things just happen, right? Like we just test and that's how it goes, but like really like digging into understanding like the why behind the standardized testing and maybe the different components of each of those test areas is really important. So my role at RISA is really more instructional, using assessment information to support instructional decisions and instructional shifts. So we're going to shift a little bit, keeping in mind with MSTEP, but what we're going to talk about is really how do we support state standardized testing on a day-to-day basis. So I found this this cartoon, and it really spoke to me when I was looking for things, because in and out of buildings all throughout the county, I hear a lot of, well, we're in testing season. It is, and it's like it lasts for weeks and weeks and weeks. And so a lot of times, a lot of kids may have this post-assessment stress disorder, but I think sometimes our teachers do too. And so Cindy and I really want to alleviate that stress, because we don't want state assessments to be stressful. So go ahead, Cindy. This is my favorite slide. Should we prepare for the MSTEP? Yes, absolutely. We should be preparing for the MSTEP. How do we do it? Yes, we do it through high quality tier 1 grade level instruction in all content areas. And I'm going to repeat the all. It's not just math and literacy, it is all. So there are a couple things that happen when we don't take time in the other content areas like science and social studies. You'll notice that science and social studies tend to be tested at grade 5. And so when I'm in and out of classrooms in the county, I see a lot of it happening at grade 5. But it should be happening K through 4 as well. And one of the things that researchers, especially Dr. Nell Duke, as she really pushes for more science and social studies to be taught, is that those are the content areas that give us a compelling reason to read and write and speak and listen. So it's really important that we don't negate those content areas when we are teaching each and every single day. So one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to put you into some breakout rooms, knowing that we kind of have a varied group here of K through 7 teachers, and we're going to do what's called a layered jigsaw. And I might adjust this given the time that we have a little bit. So if you would, go ahead and rename yourself. Oh, go back one slide, Cindy. There we go. I'm gonna ask that you rename yourself with the grade level that you most often teach, knowing that maybe you might be moving grade levels this year, but we'll let you select. So if you are a K3 teacher, using those 3 dots in the, if you click on your picture, it allows you to rename yourself. Oh, go back one more slide, Cindy. So if you are a K3 teacher, just put K3 and then you can put it right in front of your name. If you are a 4 through 7 teacher, go ahead and put 4 through 7 in front of your name. So I'm going to, I'll model this for you. So I'm going to click on the 3 dots on my picture on the screen, and I'm going to click rename, and I'm going to put 4 through 7 because I am a former middle school teacher. And then I'm going to click change. So this will actually help us when we get into our breakout rooms, and we're going to have a little mini breakout room so you can have some discussion with other colleagues. So the first ask is that each grade level is going to read a different text. So the K3 teachers, you're going to read Accelerated Learning. And this was an article that was a nice little article that was put out by the MDE last year when they were building the Accelerated Learning series toolkits. And then the 4 through 7 teachers, you are going to read Ambitious Teaching and Equitable Assessment. And it is one of my favorite articles to use with teachers. And what we're going to do is you're going to have some time to read and really look for those characteristics of high quality tier 1 instruction. Our first breakout room won't be very long, but in that breakout room, you'll be with the same grade level that read the same article, and you'll have some time to share the key points and what you would want to share with somebody maybe that didn't read the article, but you want them to take away. And then the second breakout room, I'm going to switch you up a little bit. So you'll have a mix of K3 and 4-7 so that you can share what your takeaways were from the article. And so even if you didn't read, let's say, the Ambitious Teaching and Equitable Assessment article, you'll have an idea of the gist of it. So this is a nice way to not only layer text in a classroom, but you can take this in a multitude of directions. So let me grab the links for the article. So this is the MDE article. This is the accelerated reading. So this would be for the K3 teachers. And then the Ambitious Teaching and Equitable Assessment, written by Dr. Shepard. She's incredible, out of the University of Colorado. This will be for our 4 through 7 teachers.
Okay, and I'll work on breakout rooms.
Great. So we're going to give you about 9 minutes or so to reading just for the gist, big ideas, key takeaways around high quality tier 1 instruction. So let's come back about 3:40, and then Cindy will go ahead and put us in our first breakout room. So at 3:40, we'll come back. So feel free to, if you want to shut your camera off, if you want to mute yourself, go ahead and engage in your text. What questions might you have? All right, welcome back, everyone. I know that's not enough time, but hopefully you were able to peruse the articles and get some of those main points pulled out, and you were able to have a discussion with your same grade level band to pick out the main ideas or the big key ideas that you want to share with the other grade band. So we're going to put you into mixed breakout rooms now, and each article is going to have 2 minutes each to share some of those key points or main idea points that you think should be shared with the other group. So we're going to go ahead and put you into mixed breakout rooms, and anybody can share. It doesn't have to be a nominated person, but go ahead. Each article has an opportunity, 2 minutes, to share the key points.
So what are we supposed to share in the second breakout room? Because I missed the instructions. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So each article was having an opportunity to share the key points that they wanted the other article to hear about. So you were K3, if you read the accelerated learning, you're just going to share some of the key ideas from that article with the other group.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I want to say that one of the things that I see often that was pointed out in the article is that for students who are behind or have some kind of deficit, they are not necessarily taught on grade level because they feel like, oh, well, they're supposed to be at the 4th grade level, but they're testing a second, so we're going to give 2nd grade skills. And that doesn't make any sense. It's just going to make the achievement gap even wider.
Amen.
Instead of just providing more support, to fill in those gaps, maybe in small group or intervention, they're actually putting them behind even more because legally and technically they are supposed to be taught grade level standards. So I thought that was interesting that they mentioned that because that's something I see all the time. And I've been involved in a lot of discussions with people about that. But the article did point out a lot of good things about making sure that we're still trying to provide a rigorous instruction, that we're still trying to make sure that we are, again, teaching them on grade level. And I think it's important that as teachers, we are doing small group instruction in order to provide that to meet the needs of all of our learners, both tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3. And one of the issues with the tier 2 students and 3 students, we kind of just in the past, the way things are set up, allow people to, other people to come in, pull, not push in, but pull the students out. And it kind of creates a disconnect. So it's not really closing those gaps like it was designed to do.
Yeah, I beautifully stated, seriously. When I work with teachers and when I work with principals, like, and when Cindy does her work, like, these are some of the messages that we like to push on a bit, because, go ahead, you can go to the next slide, Cindy, because when we are sticking to a tier 1 curriculum, it means that we're really using our high quality materials. They're aligned to our content standards. We're delivering rigorous instruction. We're providing those opportunities, those learning opportunities that are relevant for students, and they're personalized for students, which means that as teachers, we have to really deeply know our kids, right? Like, what makes them excited and motivated to learn? And how are we providing those rich opportunities? Are we, sticking a worksheet in front of them and using a worksheet, or are we really engaging them in tasks that matter to them? And that's the whole point about ambitious tier 1 instruction, right? Like, we're providing these rich opportunities for our students each and every day in all of the content areas, so that they can be successful later on a state assessment. It's not why we want to do that, right? Like, the state assessment is not our why. That's just a snapshot in time, like Cindy was saying. Like, our why is to, to create productive students that, go on and do really great and amazing things, right? So those are really the big pieces of tier 1 instruction, and it's important that we do it each and every single day. Go ahead, Cindy. This is probably my favorite quote. I'm reading a book called Building Thinking Classrooms in Mathematics, and Dr. Lijedal is incredible. And this is one that really stuck out and spoke to me, because when we evaluate our students, they evaluate us, because what we're choosing to evaluate tells our kids what we value. And what do we value when we say we have to stop our instruction so that I can prepare you for a test? Haven't we been preparing for our assessment all year long? So really think about when, like, we have to do test prep. We don't want to do isolated test practice items. We really want our high quality instruction that happens every day to be the practice for the game day of our state assessment, right? Go ahead, Cindy. So when we want to prepare our students, like I said, you should be preparing your students, and it means that we provide meaningful learning experience. And it also means that we resist on going on to mde.com or .edu, whatever it is, and looking at those released items and putting them in front of them and using those as like practice items. It's okay to use a released item to really look at how a question can be crafted, but we really don't want to put them in front of them and say, these are your practice items, because it's an item that they might encounter, right? Go back one slide. Yep. The other thing too is research has shown us when we do isolated test practice, using released items, it's really ignoring like the other things, the other surrounding content. It's really isolated skills. And so you may see a gain in like grammar, for example, but in the big picture of how an ELA score is reported, ELA, you may not see a gain. So it's important that, again, those meaningful learning experiences happen each and every day. We also want to make sure that our kiddos have frequent opportunities to talk, to argue, to write, to read, to do all these things about what they are learning, which means that we have to put relevant material and relevant content in front of them. We also want to make sure that there's opportunity for kids to explore the testing platforms. So that means you have to show them or provide opportunities of how to navigate the testing system. We certainly don't want technology to get in the way of how a student performs. So we do want to show them what it can look like and how test items might perform. But I think you'll be surprised because students, if they use NWEA or iReady or any of those, they know how to navigate a testing system, but it is okay, but it shouldn't be a drill and kill, let's get on it every single day and navigate the tools, because sometimes those tools can be distracting. And then we want to make sure that we are exposing students to types of questions that they might encounter. So it's, again, okay to look at those released items, but they should not be the crux of your your assessment that you create after a unit of teaching, right? You should expose kids to the different types of things that they may see. They may see a paired passage. So maybe when it makes sense in your classroom, when you've taught it, when it matches your teaching, to use a paired. So we wanted to provide you with some resources. All of the articles, Ambitious Teaching, the Tier 1 instruction, the MDE article is on there as well, but we also included some videos. So this Speaking Up for Science and Social Studies, that's Dr. Duke's kind of soapbox of why we should be teaching science and social studies each and every day, not just, you know, when we have time to, or because it's coming at the end of the week, or we're going to watch a video about science. We want to engage our kids in science and social studies. There's also some resources around computer adaptive testing, if maybe you have new teachers, or if you're just not sure how it really works and how that differs from a fixed format. We also provided some platform, the MSTEP testing platform exploration, and this is actually like a lesson you could do. So if you're using like a center, if you use centers in your classroom, maybe this is a center that kids can go on and they can practice getting into the testing platform and working with questions that they might encounter. So that could be like a 1-day or 2-day type of center activity. We also provided, this is an old guide to state assessments, but you can see they follow a pretty similar format year after year. And then some supports and accommodation guidance and what that could, how that looks. And Cindy went into detail with that, but this is a very dense document if you want more information.
Well, I'll share this quickly. It's just the links, as Heather mentioned, to that testing platform. Again, just seeing what those questions look like before they hit it, especially in the 3rd grade. You don't want the technology to have them score low rather than not knowing the content. My daughter, when they switched over to MSTEP Online, she had a really difficult time with the calculator, and she didn't even finish the test because she couldn't work the calculator itself. And it was a pilot at that time, but that she didn't finish the test because she couldn't work the technology part of it. So you don't want your students stuck in that situation.
Cindy,
Yep.
do you know if when students go through and they do all the exploration on the, like if they select a grade level, like grade 3 ELA, do you know if it actually gives results?
No, it doesn't.
I didn't think it.
No, it's just a basic way to look at what those questions are going to look like. Drag, drop, the protractor, graphing. You can even look at text to speech, calculator practice. Yeah. This is our sample, the passage-based writing prompts. Again, as Heather mentioned, do not just pull these samples. I'm so sorry. Do not just pull these samples and put them in front of the kids to test, but these are the genres that they're going to use for MSTEP. So you want to make sure that students are familiar with these type of genres. They randomly select them and send them through to the platform. So you don't know what you're going to get, but this is what students will encounter. So you want to make sure that they are familiar with this. And here are some links, like there's a sample scored essay, so students can see what a 4 looks like. What does a 0 look like? There's sample prompts, there's a rubric, the 4-point rubric that they use. There's classroom resources. Again, this is not something to print out and just use as test prep. These are something to embed into your writing lessons. Maybe you use the rubric as part of your writing, that the students are familiar with it, so that when they do come to testing at the end of the year, they've seen this before 100 times looking at this rubric, that they know it, you know, in and out. But this is something you want to embed into the instruction, not just use as something for test prep the week before teaching for the test.
So Cindy, we had another question that came in the chat. What would be the best way to start off the school year exposing students to MSTEP? Rebecca, are you asking more of like on the instructional side, on like the state accountability and compliance side?
I think what I'm after is how can I, as a special education teacher, start exposing my kids to this right off the bat at the beginning of the school year, just in terms of the content.
Well, I would.
Cindy, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. If they're taking the MSTEP, I would definitely get them on the platform. And that platform can be shared for them to do at home also. Parents can, have them work on it at home. It can be a homework. Not that I'm 100% with that, but it doesn't have to take instructional time is what I'm saying. It can be something that they can practice on. But having them know the platform, because if they don't know how to drag and drop or what drag and drop means, or how to move that protractor, if they don't know how to use the graph and what, line and ray and segment, all of those, the verbiage that they're going to use on those questions, they're going to get stuck right on that right away. So MDE also has like 15-minute YouTube videos that you can play for a whole class that goes over the tools on the test. And so you could show them that also. That's on the MDE website under parent resources or student resources, but it's a YouTube video that you would play for them if you wanted to show them a quick. And then you looking at your claims and targets, what are they focusing on, and then aligning those claims and targets into your teaching.
So I would add, like, from the instructional side too, just making sure that teachers, your students, are receiving the tier one content, as well as what they need in addition to that in order to support their IEP goals or their specific the specific supports that they're receiving as outlined in their IEP. But I would just really encourage that teachers are teaching tier one every single day to all students, regardless of, additional supports that they may be receiving. Because I don't know if Cherie is still on, but we had a nice conversation that if we're constantly remediating, and that's in that other article, if we're constantly like trying to fill gaps with students, like our gap is actually going to widen because they're never going to get that grade level tier one instruction. So it's really important that when teachers are planning, that we're planning just those scaffolds with the scaffolds in mind, knowing that we may have students that may not have mastered all content due to the pandemic and things such as, related to that, or, missed school or online school versus in person, but that what we can do each and every day is that through our intentional and purposeful planning is to really think about what students might need and how you can build that in so that we're not going backwards because we don't have time to go backwards, but that we're maintaining our grade level content.
Thank you. I appreciate.
I really hope that this was kind of affirming, and the things that you already know as solid educators, like, that instruction is what kids need, and each and every day. And it's hard to put a pause when there might be some pressure to prepare for a big test. And, while we know that communities and decisions and policymakers and, central office make decisions around stuff, the best thing that teachers can do to prepare students is high quality instructional practices.